95 out of every 100 people you meet will fail in life. Not because they want to, not because they plan to, but because they drift. Follow-up: they wake up, go through the motions, and never realize that conformity and neglect destroy them. Let me show you why so many fail and how the few succeed. In this lesson, I'm going to reveal the real reasons why 95% of people will always fail. You'll see why poverty and failure are not caused by bad luck, but by drifting, conformity, and neglect. You'll discover the law that shapes both failure and success, the law that says we become what we think about. And you'll learn how to turn this law in your favor, so you can leave the 95% behind and join the 5% who succeed. Think about your own life for a moment. Have you ever wondered why you work hard, yet progress feels slow? Why some people seem to rise while others, just as talented, remain stuck? Why the majority always struggle, even in times of plenty? The answer lies not in chance, not in luck, but in the way they think and live. Most people don't know why they get up in the morning. They go to work because others go. They buy what others buy. They complain about what others complain about. They drift with the crowd, never realizing that the crowd is drifting too. But a small minority live differently. They think for themselves, they set definite goals, they discipline their minds, and that small minority succeed while the rest fail. That is the contrast I want you to see. In the next 60 minutes, we'll uncover the truth about why 95% of people always fail. We'll begin with the tragic statistics that reveal how most lives end in frustration. We'll see the root causes of poverty and failure, the weeds of fear, doubt, envy, and the trap of conformity. We'll uncover the law of thought, the truth that we become what we think about, and how it explains both success and failure. We'll see why persistence is the rare quality that makes the difference, and why service is the true foundation of wealth. And before we finish, I'll leave you with a challenge that, if you accept it, will put you on the path of the 5% who succeed. Here's something most people completely miss, and yet it explains more failure than almost anything else you'll ever hear. Imagine 100 young men, all at the same starting line, all beginning life at 25 years of age. Each one of them is full of hope, full of energy, full of expectation. Ask them if they plan to succeed, and nearly every hand will rise. Ask them if they plan to fail, and not a single one will say yes. Every one of them intends to do well. Everyone believes his future will be secure. And yet, follow those same 100 men until they reach the age of 65, and here is what you find: only one will be rich. 4 more will be financially secure, 5 will still be working because they have to, and 54 will be broke, dependent on family, on government, or on charity just to survive. 95 out of 100 will have failed. Now pause and think about that. 95% of men and women fail. That's not an opinion, that is a fact, repeated across every generation. And here is the real tragedy. None of them planned it that way. None of them woke up one day and said, "I think I'll spend my life drifting, struggling, worrying, and end up with nothing." No, every one of them set out with the intention to succeed, and yet 95 failed. So why? Why do the overwhelming majority begin with hope but end with disappointment? Why do they expect success but settle for failure? The answer is as plain as it is overlooked. They drift. They go through life like a ship without a captain, without a chart, without a destination. Now, a ship is a magnificent thing. It is designed to cross oceans, to carry heavy cargo, to withstand storms, and to arrive at port. But release it without a captain, without a crew, without a chart, and it cannot reach any destination. It will drift until it wrecks. And so it is with human beings. Each one of us is designed with magnificent potential. Each one of us has within the greatest machine ever created, the human mind. But unless we take control of it, unless we chart a course with a definite goal, we too will drift, and drifting always ends in failure. This is why most people fail, not because they want to, but because they never choose not to. They never decide on a goal. They never set a direction. They wake each day because the alarm clock rings. They go to work because everyone else does. They spend, they complain, they repeat the cycle, and they assume that somehow life will turn out well in the end. but life doesn't work that way. Life gives to each of us exactly what we demand of it, and if we demand nothing, if we give it no clear direction, it gives us nothing in return. And that is why I say drifting is the great enemy of success. It wastes the most precious resource you have, time. It wastes the greatest power you have, your mind. And once the years are gone, they cannot be reclaimed. That is the price of drifting, and it is why 95% of people always fail. But here's the key insight, and it may shock you when you first hear it. Failure is not an accident. It is predictable. It comes by law, just as success does. If 100 men begin at 25, and 95 of them fail, then we must conclude that failure has causes, just as success has causes. It is not luck, it is not chance, it is not fate. It is consequence. And once you understand that, you can see it clearly in your own life and in the lives of those around you. And that leads us naturally to our next truth. If failure is not an accident, then what is it? If 95% fail, what exactly causes it? For if we can see the cause, we can also see the cure. And that is what we must uncover next. Most people think of failure as something mysterious, something that happens by accident, something that comes without warning. They look at the poor, the broken, the dependent, and they say, life must have dealt them a bad hand. They speak of luck, of chance, of fate, as though failure were some random storm that swept across their lives. But here is the truth, plain and undeniable. Failure is no accident. Failure is predictable. It is the natural result of neglect, of drifting, of going through life without a chart or a compass. Just as weeds grow in a garden that is never tended, failure grows in the life that is never directed. Let us think about this clearly. Failure doesn't arrive in one sudden blow. It is not one great catastrophe that ends a man's future. No failure creeps in slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. It comes by inches. It is the sum of small neglects repeated day after day. A man neglects to set a goal, and so he drifts. He neglects to guard his thoughts, and so they fill with fear and resentment. He neglects to persist, and so he quits too soon. Each neglect seems small in the moment. Each one seems harmless, excusable, ordinary, but together over the years they add up to disaster. And by the time he reaches the end of his days, he looks back and wonders why success never came, never realizing that he had been planting the seeds of failure all along. Now consider the law of cause and effect. For every action, there is a result. Plant wheat, and you will harvest wheat. Plant weeds, and you will harvest weeds. Plant nothing at all, and weeds will still grow, because nature abhors a vacuum. In the same way, if you plant your mind with faith, gratitude, service, and vision, your life will bear the fruit of success. But if you plant it with fear, envy, doubt, and resentment, or if you plant nothing at all, then your life will return the weeds of failure. This is not a mystery. It is as predictable as the rising of the Sunday. Let me give you a picture. One man goes through life just going along. He takes whatever job is offered. He works because others work. He spends what he earns. He complains about what others complain about. He never questions, never decides, never chooses, and after 40 years, what does he have? The same worries, the same dependence, the same frustration as the 95%. His life has been wasted, not by accident, but by default. He planted nothing, and so he harvested weeds. Another man, by contrast, decides upon a definite course. He sets a goal, even a modest one, and he directs his thoughts toward it each day. He chooses his actions deliberately. He plants seeds of growth, of service, of faith. And over the years his life bears the fruit of those thoughts. He succeeds, not by chance, but by law. So remember this, failure is not some mysterious force that strikes without warning. It is the natural harvest of wrong thoughts, of neglected duties, of a drifting life. It is predictable, certain, unavoidable, and that is why 95% of people always fail. They do not plan to. They simply fail to plan. They neglect the small things, and those small things add up to great failure. But if failure is predictable, then success must also be predictable. If neglect brings poverty, then deliberate thought must bring wealth. If drifting leads to ruin, then direction must lead to security. And if wrong thinking creates failure, then right thinking must create success. And that brings us to the next great truth, the root causes of failure and the way to overcome them. Here is the first and perhaps the most destructive root of failure: wrong thinking. Poverty does not begin in empty pockets. It begins in the mind. Failure does not start with a loss of opportunity. It starts with a loss of direction in thought. The human mind is like fertile soil, and it will return in abundance whatever is planted in it. Plant wheat, and the soil gives back wheat. Plant weeds, and the soil gives back weeds. Plant nothing at all, and weeds will still appear, because weeds require no tending, no effort, no cultivation. So it is with thought. If you plant your mind with faith, vision, gratitude, and purpose, it will return abundance and success. But if you allow fear, envy, resentment, and doubt to take root, or if you neglect to plant anything at all, then failure will grow naturally. It will come uninvited, silently, relentlessly, until it fills the whole garden of your life. Think of the man who begins each morning with worry. His first thought upon waking is of his bills, his debts, his troubles. All through the day he dwells upon what he lacks, what he fears, what he resents. And because his mind is filled with these weeds, his actions reflect them. He hesitates where he should act boldly. He retreats where he should advance. He resents the success of others, instead of learning from it. And slowly, year after year, his life begins to mirror his thoughts. The weeds he allowed to grow in his mind take root in his circumstances. His debts deepen. His opportunities diminish. His life contracts. He believes he is cursed by fate, but in truth, he is only harvesting the crop he himself planted in the soil of his mind. Now consider another man, facing the same difficulties. He too has debts, he too has obstacles, but instead of dwelling on lack, he chooses to dwell on growth. Each day he asks himself, what can I learn? How can I serve? What step can I take to improve? His thoughts direct his actions. He studies when others waste time. He saves when others spend recklessly. He takes opportunities when others are paralyzed by fear. Slowly, his circumstances change. His debts shrink, his skills grow, his opportunities multiply. Life begins to mirror his thoughts of growth and service, and in time he succeeds. Not by chance, not by luck, but by the law that the mind returns what is planted in it. This is why I say the weeds of wrong thinking are the greatest cause of failure. They grow automatically if you do nothing. They creep in silently if you are not vigilant. They choke out vision, stifle faith, smother purpose. And once they take root, they bring a harvest of poverty and disappointment. Most people never understand this. They think failure is caused by circumstance. They blame their employer, their neighbor, the government, the economy, the times. But the truth is simpler and more powerful. Failure is caused by wrong thinking. It begins in the mind, and it ends in the life. So I ask you, what thoughts are you planting? Do you spend your days dwelling on what you lack or on what you can build? Do you envy others, or do you let their success inspire your own? Do you allow resentment to sour your spirit, or do you choose gratitude for what you already have? The answer to those questions will determine your future, because your life is nothing more than the harvest of your thoughts. And this brings us to the second great root of failure, one even more subtle and dangerous, the trap of conformity. For not only do most people fill their minds with weeds, they also surrender their minds to the crowd. They think not their own thoughts, but the thoughts of others. And because the crowd fails, they fail too. That is the next truth we must uncover. Now, here is another root cause of failure, one that holds more people in poverty and frustration than almost any other single force. It is the trap of conformity. From the time we are children, we are taught to look around us, to measure ourselves by others, to imitate, to follow, to fit in. And because nearly everyone we see is drifting, when we conform to them, we drift too. We assume the crowd must be right, but the crowd is failing. And by following them, we inherit their fate. Think back to the tragic statistic we considered before. 100 men, all beginning at 25, all full of hope and expectation. By 65, only 5 succeed, and 95 fail. Now ask yourself, what did the 95 do? They conformed. They thought as the crowd thought. They worked as the crowd worked. They spent as the crowd spent. They complained as the crowd complained. They drifted as the crowd drifted. And so they ended where the crowd always ends, in failure. Not one of them planned it. Not one of them intended it. They simply followed others without question. Conformity feels safe. It gives the comfort of numbers. When you do what others do, you feel protected, you feel normal, you feel secure. But it is a false security. For if the crowd is heading over a cliff, does it matter how safe it feels to be in the middle of them? If the crowd is failing, then to conform to them is to guarantee your own failure. And that is exactly what happens to the 95%. They go to jobs they do not love because everyone else does. They spend more than they earn because everyone else does. They live without goals, without plans, without purpose, because everyone else does. They live outer-directed lives, waiting for circumstances to dictate their next move, and never realizing that they have surrendered the one thing that could have saved them their ability to think for themselves. Let me give you a picture. A man works at a job he dislikes, year after year. When asked why, he says, "Well, everyone has to work somewhere. This is just what people do." He accepts his circumstances as final because he sees others doing the same. He never asks what he truly wants, never decides on a goal, never questions the pattern. And so his life becomes a reflection of the crowd, frustrated, tired, dependent, poor. Another man, faced with the same beginning, dares to ask, "What do I want my life to be? What service can I render? What goal will give me purpose?" He chooses differently, he thinks differently. He breaks free of conformity. And because he does, his life takes on a different shape. He succeeds, not by luck, but because he refused to follow the 95% who always fail. So remember this: conformity is the opposite of courage. It requires no thought, no responsibility, no decision. It is drifting with the current. But the current of the crowd leads to failure. And unless you are willing to think for yourself, to set your own course, to choose your own goal, you will be carried along with the 95% into the same fate they always meet. That is why I say the trap of conformity is one of the great causes of failure. It is easy, it is comfortable, it is popular, and it is fatal. Now, if wrong thinking and conformity are the roots of failure, then what is the root of success? What is the truth that separates the few who succeed from the many who fail? The answer is simple, yet it is ignored by almost everyone. It is the strangest secret. We become what we think about. And that is the law we must uncover next. Now we come to the truth that explains both failure and success, the principle that separates the 5% who succeed from the 95% who fail. It is the strangest secret, and yet it is no secret at all. It has been spoken by sages and prophets, by philosophers and teachers, by leaders throughout the ages. And it can be summed up in one sentence: we become what we think about. That is the law. That is the truth. That is the power that shapes every life. Your dominant thoughts, the things you dwell upon day after day, will sooner or later take form in your life. They will direct your actions, guide your decisions, shape your habits, and create your circumstances. Whatever you plant in your mind, you will eventually harvest in your life. Think of it carefully. A man who thinks constantly of fear, who dwells on what he lacks, who broods over his debts and his troubles, is shaping his future in the image of those thoughts. His mind becomes a prison of worry, and his actions reflect it. He hesitates when opportunity appears, because he expects failure. He avoids risk, because he imagines loss. He resents the success of others, because he believes life has cheated him, and as he thinks, so he becomes. His life contracts, his opportunities shrink, his poverty deepens, and he proves himself right because he has become what he thought about. Another man, faced with the same circumstances, chooses a different course. He thinks of growth, of learning, of service. He pictures a better future, and he holds that picture in his mind each day. His thoughts give him courage. They shape his actions with confidence. He takes opportunities, he persists when others quit, he learns from failure, he keeps moving forward. And as he thinks, so he becomes. His life expands, his opportunities multiply, his wealth grows, and he too proves himself right because he has become what he thought about. This is the law of thought in action. It makes no exceptions. It is as consistent as gravity, as certain as the sunrise. If you think failure, you will fail. If you think success, you will succeed. If you fill your mind with resentment, you will live in bitterness. If you fill your mind with gratitude, you will live in peace. If you focus on lack, you will live in lack. If you focus on abundance, you will find opportunities for abundance all around you. The law does not care who you are, where you were born, what education you have, or what your circumstances are today. It simply mirrors back to you the thoughts you choose to dwell upon. Now consider this. Two men work at the same job, earn the same wage, live in the same town. On the surface, they are equal, but in their thoughts, they are worlds apart. One thinks only of survival. He resents his work, he envies his neighbors, he fears the future. The other thinks of growth. He asks how he can serve better, how he can improve, how he can use his time more wisely. 20 years later, their lives are unrecognizable. One is poor, bitter, and defeated. The other is secure, respected, and fulfilled. What made the difference? Not luck, not chance, not opportunity. The difference was in their thoughts. Each became what he thought about. So remember this, your thoughts are not idle. They are seeds, they are directions, they are commands given to your mind, which in turn directs your life. If you do not like the harvest you are reaping, look to the seeds you are planting. For you cannot think one way and live another. You cannot fill your mind with weeds and expect a field of wheat. You cannot think failure and live success. You cannot think poverty and live wealth. The law will not be mocked. As you think, so you will become. And this brings us to the next great truth. If thoughts shape reality, then we must give our thoughts direction. We must not only think positively, we must think purposefully. We must set a definite goal, a worthy ideal, and let it serve as the compass of our thoughts. For without a goal, the mind will drift back into weeds. And that is the lesson we must uncover next. If it is true that we become what we think about, and it is then the question we must ask is this: what shall we think about? What image shall we hold before the mind, day after day, until it shapes our lives? The answer is simple. Yet it is ignored by almost everyone. We must set a definite goal. A goal is to the mind what a chart is to a ship, what a compass is to a traveler. Without it, the ship drifts, the traveler wanders, the mind returns to weeds. But with it, direction is clear, energy is focused, and progress is inevitable. This is why so few succeed and so many fail. The 95% never decide upon a definite aim. They wake because the alarm rings, they work because others work, they spend because others spend, they drift because others drift. And at the end of their lives, they arrive at failure, not by choice, but by default. Think of it this way. If you asked a ship's captain where he was headed, and he replied, "Nowhere in particular, we're just going out to sea," what would you expect? You would expect that ship to drift, to wander, to waste its fuel, to end up lost or wrecked. And you would be right. No ship sails without a destination. No pilot flies without a course. Yet most men and women live without a goal. They rise each morning, they go through the motions, they follow routines, but they have no definite aim. And just as surely as a ship without a destination will never reach port, a life without a goal will never reach success. So what is the solution? It is to choose a goal that is clear, definite, and worthy, and to fix your thoughts upon it daily. Write it down on a small card. Carry it with you. Look at it each morning when you wake, each evening before you sleep, and as often as you can throughout the day. Let it dominate your thoughts. Let it serve as the compass of your mind. And each time your thoughts begin to drift into worry, fear, or resentment, bring them back to your goal. Replace the weeds with wheat. Replace doubt with vision. Replace drifting with direction. In time, your goal will shape your actions. Your actions will shape your habits, and your habits will shape your destiny. Now consider how this principle works in different lives. A teacher sets her goal not merely to complete lessons, but to inspire her students. to bring out the best in them. Each day she holds that goal in her mind. She thinks of ways to encourage, to guide, to challenge. Slowly, her classroom becomes a place of growth, and her success is assured. A craftsman sets his goal to master his trade, to create work of beauty and quality. Each day he thinks of improvement, of precision, of excellence. His hands grow skilled, his reputation spreads, and his life gains meaning. He is successful because he is moving toward a worthy ideal. A business owner sets his goal to serve his customers better than anyone else. Each day he thinks of value, of service, of innovation. His business grows, his income rises, his wealth increases. In each case, the principle is the same. The mind was given direction by a definite goal, and life reflected it back in success. This is why I say that success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. It is not a sudden arrival, not a stroke of luck, not a matter of chance. It is the steady, daily movement toward a goal you have chosen. The moment you set such a goal and begin to move toward it, you are already successful. And as you persist, success in its fullness becomes inevitable. But here is the challenge. Setting a goal is not enough. For the weeds of fear, doubt, and resentment will always try to creep back in. The crowd will always try to pull you back into conformity. The 95% will always try to convince you to drift with them. That is why the mind must not only be directed, it must also be disciplined, guarded, and trained. And that is the truth we must uncover next. Now that we have seen the necessity of setting a definite goal, we must face the truth that even with a goal clearly in mind, success is not yet assured. For the mind, like a fortress, must be guarded. And the sad fact is that most men and women leave their gates unguarded, their walls unprotected, their thoughts open to every intruder. Fear slips in, doubt makes itself at home, resentment whispers from the shadows, envy poisons the spirit, and once these intruders take root, they weaken the will, they cloud the vision, they choke out the seeds of success. A man may have a worthy goal, but if he allows his mind to be overrun with negative thoughts, he will find himself paralyzed, drifting back into the same failures he hoped to escape. The mind, like soil, does not discriminate. It will grow whatever is planted in it. If you sow weeds, it will return weeds. If you sow wheat, it will return wheat. But it will return in abundance. That is why guarding the mind is so critical. You cannot prevent negative thoughts from knocking at the door. They will come uninvited, persistent, dressed in convincing disguises, but you can decide whether to admit them. And this choice, made day after day, shapes your future. Admit worry, and you will live in worry. Admit resentment, and you will live in bitterness. Admit fear, and you will live in limitation. But admit faith, and you will live in confidence. Admit gratitude, and you will live in peace. Admit vision, and you will live in growth. The mind returns in kind whatever you choose to admit. Now let me give you a picture. Imagine two farmers, each with a field of equal size and quality. The first farmer plants wheat in the spring, but he neglects to guard his field. Weeds spring up alongside the wheat. He tells himself they are small, harmless, unworthy of his attention. But by summer, the weeds are strong, choking the wheat, robbing it of sunlight and nutrients. By autumn, his harvest is thin, disappointing, scarcely enough to feed his family. The second farmer plants wheat, and each time a weed appears, he pulls it up. He waters faithfully, he tends carefully, he guards his field against intrusion. By autumn, his harvest is rich, abundant, overflowing. The difference was not in the soil, nor in the seed, but in the discipline of the farmer. And so it is with the mind. So remember this. Guarding the mind is not a single decision but a daily practice. It is choosing each morning what thoughts you will admit and what thoughts you will cast out. It is refusing to dwell on fear, even when it comes knocking. It is refusing to nurture resentment, even when it feels justified. It is replacing every negative thought with one that serves your goal. It is planting gratitude, expectancy, and enthusiasm until they crowd out all else. Do this faithfully, and your mind will become your ally. Neglect it, and it will become your enemy. This is why so few succeed, even among those who set goals. They never learn to guard the gates of the mind. They let weeds grow unchecked, and then they wonder why their harvest is thin. But if you would join the 5%, If you would live among the few who succeed, then you must learn to guard your thoughts as though they were your greatest treasure, for they are. And this brings us to another great truth, one that magnifies the power of guarding the mind. For it is not only the thoughts we admit that matter, it is the attitude with which we face life each day. And that is what we must uncover next. Of all the tools at our disposal, of all the qualities that separate the successful from the unsuccessful, there is one that works like a magic word. That word is attitude. Your attitude toward yourself, toward others, toward your work, and toward life itself will shape the results you experience more than any single factor. For life, in the end, does not give us what we want. It reflects what we are. It mirrors back to us the spirit we project, the energy we carry, the outlook we hold in our hearts. If you approach life with gratitude, expectancy, and enthusiasm, life reflects those qualities back to you in opportunities, in relationships, in abundance. But if you approach life with bitterness, resentment, and complaint, life reflects that as well, giving you more reasons to be bitter, more to resent, more to complain about. Your attitude is the lens through which you see the world, and that lens determines what you find. Consider this. Two families move to the same town, into the same neighborhood. After a few weeks, one family complains, "These people are unfriendly. No one here smiles. No one makes an effort." The other family says, "This is the friendliest place we've ever lived. People smile, they wave, they seem glad to know us." How can both be true? The town has not changed. The people are the same. The difference is in attitude. The first family waited for others to smile first. They expected coldness, and so they found it. The second family smiled first. They expected warmth, and so they received it. Life reflected back to each family the attitude they carried into it, and so it is with all of us. Now let us set the stakes. If your attitude is poor, if you carry resentment, envy, or indifference, you will find that doors close to you, opportunities slip by, relationships sour. You will live in constant frustration, never realizing that you are projecting into the world the very thing you dislike. But if your attitude is one of gratitude, if you expect good things, if you treat others as important, if you radiate enthusiasm for life, you will find that doors open, opportunities appear, relationships flourish. Life will mirror your inner state, and that mirror will shape your destiny. So, what is the solution? It is to take responsibility each day for the attitude you carry. Begin each morning not by asking, "What will the day bring me?" but by deciding, "What will I bring to this day?" Decide to be grateful for life, for health, for opportunity. Decide to expect good things, to look for them, to prepare for them, to welcome them when they come. Decide to treat each person you meet as though they were the most important person in the world, because to them, they are. And decide to carry enthusiasm, that spark of energy that lifts not only you, but those around you. Enthusiasm is contagious, and when it is genuine, it draws people, it builds trust, it creates opportunities. Let me give you another picture. A man approaches his work with resentment. He sees it as a burden, a curse, a thing to be endured. He does only what is required, and he resents every moment of it. His results are poor, his opportunities scarce, his rewards small. Another man approaches the same work with gratitude. He sees it as an opportunity to learn, to serve, to grow. He does more than is expected, and he does it with enthusiasm. His results are excellent, his opportunities multiply, his rewards increase. The difference between the two is not the work, nor the pay, nor the circumstances. It is attitude. So remember this. Your attitude is the magic word. It shapes your experience, it colors your world, it sets the limits of your success. Guard it as carefully as you guard your thoughts, for it is the outward expression of those thoughts. Choose gratitude, expectancy, and enthusiasm, and life will mirror them back to you. Choose bitterness, resentment, and complaint, and life will mirror those back as well. The choice, as always, is yours. But even with a guarded mind and a positive attitude, one more quality is needed, the rarest quality of all, the one that explains why so few ever rise above mediocrity. That quality is persistence, and it is persistence that we must now uncover. Now we come to the rarest quality of all, the one that makes the greatest difference between the 95% who fail and the 5% who succeed. That quality is persistence. Almost anyone can begin. Almost anyone can feel enthusiasm at the start of a new project, a new goal, a new resolution. Beginnings are easy, because beginnings are filled with hope. But what separates the successful from the unsuccessful is not how they start, it is how they continue. It is what they do when the first wave of enthusiasm fades, when progress seems slow, when obstacles appear, when failure knocks at the door. Most people quit. They abandon their goals at the first sign of difficulty. They let discouragement take root. They tell themselves it wasn't meant to be, that perhaps they were foolish to try, and with that decision, they rejoin the 95% who always fail. Think of it like the farmer in the springtime. He plants his seeds, and for a week he waters them faithfully. But when nothing appears, he grows impatient. He digs them up to see if they are growing. He shakes his head, declares them worthless, and abandons the field. What happens? The weeds take over, and by harvest time he has nothing. Another farmer plants the same seeds. He too sees nothing for weeks. But he understands the law of growth. He knows that the real work is happening beneath the surface, invisible to the eye. He continues to water, to weed, to wait. And in time, the shoots appear, the plants grow, the harvest comes. The difference was not in the soil, nor in the seed, but in persistence. This is the way of life. Success is invisible before it is visible. Progress happens quietly, beneath the surface, before it shows itself to the world. The man who persists understands this. He does not demand instant harvests. He does not quit when results are slow. He holds to his goal. He continues in faith. He trusts the process. And because he persists, he succeeds. The man who quits never sees the fruit of his labor. He abandons the field before the harvest, and so he reaps nothing. Consider the story of Thomas Edison, who failed 10,000 times before perfecting the electric light. 10,000 attempts, 10,000 setbacks, 10,000 opportunities to quit. But Edison persisted. Each failure taught him something. Each mistake brought him closer. And at last, the light came. Today, we take it for granted, but it exists because one man refused to quit. That is the power of persistence. Now set the stakes clearly. If you lack persistence, no goal, however worthy, will carry you to success. You may have faith, you may have vision, you may have a fine attitude, but if you quit when the way grows difficult, you will fail. And if you persist, no obstacle, however great, can ultimately stop you. For the law is certain. The harvest belongs to those who continue. So remember this. Persistence is the rare quality that turns goals into achievements, service into wealth, dreams into reality. It is rare because it is difficult, but it is difficult only because most people never learn to expect difficulty as part of the process. They imagine success should be quick, easy, painless. It never island. Success demands persistence, and those who give it are always rewarded. And now we come to the final lesson. The reward of all these principles put together the true fruits of right thinking, of goals, of discipline, of attitude, of persistence. For the reward is not only money, not only security, but freedom and fulfillment. And that is where we must go next. And now we come to the great reward of all this discipline, all this persistence, all this careful direction of thought. For the true difference between those who succeed and those who fail is not simply the difference between wealth and poverty. It is deeper than that. It is the difference between freedom and dependence. Poverty is more than empty pockets. Poverty is bondage. It is the quiet fear that governs every decision, the constant worry of bills unpaid, of needs unmet, of tomorrows uncertain. Poverty is dependence upon others for survival, upon governments, upon employers, upon charity, upon chance. It robs a man not only of comfort, but of dignity. It ties his hands, it binds his spirit, it forces him to live always in reaction, never in creation. That is why poverty is not only a material condition, it is a spiritual one. It breaks a man inside long before it breaks him outside. But success, rightly understood, is freedom. It is not the mere possession of money or things. It is the assurance that you are no longer bound by fear, no longer controlled by circumstances, no longer dependent on the whims of others. Success is the quiet confidence of knowing you can stand on your own, that you have taken control of your destiny, that you have built a life not of drifting but of direction. It is the ability to choose your work, to choose your environment, to choose your future, and above all, it is peace of mind. That peace of mind is the highest reward of success, and it is the thing the 95% will never know, because they never took control of their thoughts. Picture two men at 65 years of age. Both began life with hope. Both had intelligence, talent, opportunity. But one conformed. He drifted. He followed the crowd. He thought the thoughts of others. He lived outer-directed, waiting for circumstances to guide him. At 65, he is still working because he must, or worse, he is dependent upon others for survival. He looks back over his years with regret, forward to the future with fear. He is poor not only in money but in spirit. The other man chose differently. He set a goal. He directed his mind. He guarded his thoughts, held his attitude, persisted through obstacles, served others faithfully. At 65, he is free. He may have wealth in money, but more importantly, he has wealth in peace. He looks back with satisfaction, forward with confidence. He has lived deliberately, and because he has, his life is rich with meaning. This is the freedom that comes from right thinking. This is the reward of refusing to drift, of daring to set a course, of persisting when others quit. It is a freedom that cannot be bought, cannot be given, cannot be borrowed. It can only be earned. It is the result of discipline, of persistence, of faith, of service, and once you know it, you will never again trade it for dependence. Once you have tasted freedom, you will never again be content to drift with the crowd. But freedom, as great as it is not the final reward. For man was not made only to be free. He was made to live with meaning, with purpose, with contribution. And that is the final truth, the one that the 95% never discover, and the one that the 5% treasure most. That truth is fulfillment, and that is where we must turn next. And now we arrive at the highest reward of all, the reward that crowns success and gives it its deepest meaning. For wealth by itself is not enough. Freedom by itself, as precious as it is not enough. Many have gained wealth and freedom only to discover that something essential was missing. They found themselves restless, dissatisfied, searching for more. Why? Because man was not created merely to accumulate or to escape dependence. He was created to serve, to contribute, to live each day in harmony with a purpose greater than himself. True fulfillment comes not from what we get, but from what we give. It is in service that life finds its meaning, and without service, no amount of money, no degree of freedom, no measure of success can satisfy the human heart. Think of it carefully. Every lasting fortune, every enduring achievement, every great life has been built upon service. The teacher who devotes herself to her students, who pours her energy into inspiring and guiding them, is successful regardless of her income, because her life is rich with meaning. The craftsman who dedicates himself to quality, who pours his skill into his work, who takes pride in creating something of value, is successful regardless of applause, because his work contributes to others. The business owner who asks each day, "How can I serve my customers better? How can I add more value than I am paid for?" is successful not only in wealth, but in the satisfaction of knowing his life has lifted others. In each case, the true measure of success is service, and the true reward is fulfillment. Now consider the poor man, not merely in possessions, but in spirit. He asks only, "What can I get? What is owed to me? What is the least I can do?" His thoughts are consumed with lack, his efforts with self-preservation. He gives little, and so he receives little. He lives empty, resentful, dissatisfied, always waiting for life to deliver what he never gave. Contrast him with the man who asks, "What can I give? How can I contribute? How can I leave others better than I found them?" His thoughts are outward, his efforts generous. He gives much, and so he receives much. He lives full, grateful, satisfied, at peace. The difference is not in circumstances, but in service. Let me give you a picture. A doctor treats his patients not merely as cases, but as people listening, caring, serving. His practice grows, not by chance, but by service. A shopkeeper improves his store, greets customers with warmth, gives more than expected. His business thrives, not by accident, but by service. A mother raises her children with patience and wisdom, serving them with love. Her success is not measured in money, but in the strength of her family and the lives her children lead. In each of these lives, the greatest reward is not wealth alone, but the fulfillment that comes from serving others well. This is why I say that true success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. It is not a number in a bank account, nor a title on a door, nor applause from the crowd. It is the quiet joy of knowing you are moving steadily toward a purpose you have chosen, and that along the way you are serving others, giving more than you receive, leaving the world a little better than you found it. That is the ultimate reward. That is the truth the 95% never discover, and that is the treasure reserved for the 5% who dare to think, to plan, to persist, to serve. And so, as we bring all of these lessons together, let us take one final step. Let us gather them into a single truth and a single challenge, so that you will not only know why 95% always fail, but you will also know how to ensure you never join them. And now we have reached the end of our journey together, and it is time to stand back and see the whole picture. We began with the tragic statistic that has held true across generations. Of every 100 men who start life at 25, by the age of 65, only 5 will have succeeded. 95 will have failed, not because they planned to, not because they lacked ability, but because they drifted, they neglected, they conformed, they thought the wrong thoughts and lived the wrong attitudes. They wasted the greatest power they possessed, the power of their own minds. And the law, which never fails, returned to them exactly what they gave it. We saw that failure is not an accident, it is not chance, it is not mysterious, it is as predictable as the sunrise. It comes through neglect, through conformity, through wrong thinking. It comes the same way weeds overrun a field left untended. And we saw that success is not an accident either. It is just as predictable, just as certain, because it too is governed by the same law. We become what we think about. A man is today the sum total of all his yesterday's thoughts, and he will be tomorrow exactly what he thinks today. That is the strangest secret, and it is the truth that separates the 95% who fail from the 5% who succeed. We saw that in order to succeed, we must set a definite goal, a worthy ideal, and give our thoughts to it each day. Without a goal, the mind drifts, the life wastes, and the years are lost. We saw that the mind must be guarded, as a fortress is guarded, against the weeds of fear, envy, resentment, and doubt. We saw that attitude, the magic word, is the outward reflection of thought, the mirror that life holds up to us. Gratitude, expectancy, and enthusiasm draw opportunity. Bitterness, resentment, and complaint repel it. We saw that persistence, the rare quality, is what carries a man through when enthusiasm fades, when progress is invisible, when obstacles rise up in his path. Persistence turns invisible effort into visible harvest. And finally, we saw that the true reward is not simply wealth, not simply security, but freedom and fulfillment. Freedom from fear. Freedom from dependence. Freedom to live deliberately. And fulfillment that comes only through service, through giving more than we receive, through living each day in harmony with a purpose greater than ourselves. So here's the truth I want you to carry with you. 95% of people will always fail because they never take control of their minds. They drift, they conform, they neglect, they quit too soon. They allow weeds to grow where wheat could have been planted. But you need not be among them. You can join the 5%. You can set a goal, guard your mind, shape your attitude, persist in your efforts, and serve with all your heart. And if you do, the law will reward you. It cannot fail. And here is my challenge to you. Before this day ends, choose one clear goal for your life. Write it down, make it definite, make it worthy, carry it with you. Read it each morning when you wake, each evening before you sleep, and as often as you can throughout the day. Let it dominate your thoughts. Guard your mind against anything that does not serve it. Persist in it when progress is slow. Render more service than you are paid for, and trust the law to do its work. For if you do, you will never again drift, you will never again envy, you will never again wonder why others succeed while you do not. You will know the truth. You will know that success is not chance but choice, not luck but law. And let me leave you with this. In my next message, I will show you the one simple daily practice that ensures this law keeps working for you, not for a week, not for a month, but for the rest of your life. Most people never do it, and that is why they slip back into drifting. But those who practice it find that success becomes inevitable, so take the challenge now. Begin today, write down your goal. Guard your mind, shape your attitude, persist in your purpose, serve more than you are paid for. And then join me in the next lesson, where I will show you how to keep this law alive in your life forever. Because the truth is this: your future is not waiting years ahead. Your future begins in the very next thought you choose.